Prologue, the dream that called his name ****. On the night Santiago learned that the moon could drown, he was sleeping beneath a roof of blue glass, in a town built between the sea and the sky. The dream began with silence. Not ordinary silence, like an empty room or a sleeping street, but a silence so deep it seemed older than the world. Santiago stood barefoot on a shore he did not recognize. The sand beneath him shimmered with tiny lights, as if the stars had fallen from heaven and hidden themselves beneath the tide. Far out on the black water, something enormous moved. At first, he thought it was an island. Then the island breathed. A great silver whale rose from the sea, carrying on its back a forest of white trees with leaves like lanterns. From its mouth came a sound that was not a song, not a word, but something his heart understood before his mind could translate it. Santiago. The boy trembled. The whale opened one eye, vast and golden, and in that eye he saw a map. Not a map of roads or countries, but of choices. Every path he had refused. Every question he had buried. Every grief he had pretended was not heavy. Then the moon loosened from the sky. It fell slowly, like a pearl slipping from a broken necklace, and sank beneath the waves without a sound. The sea went dark. The whale spoke again. When the moon drowns, follow the bell beneath the water. Santiago tried to ask what it meant, but the tide rose around his ankles, cold and bright. Beneath the water, a bell began to ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. And then he woke with tears on his face, though he could not remember crying. Outside his window, the real moon hung safely above the rooftops of Bell Harbor. But from somewhere far below the cliffs, beneath the sleeping town and the breathing sea, a bell was ringing. Chapter 1, Bell Harbor. Bell Harbor was a town of lanterns, gulls, and patient old houses that leaned toward the sea as though listening for gossip from the waves. Every morning, mist climbed the cliffs and wandered through the streets. It curled around the baker's door, slipped beneath the fish market awnings, and silvered the blue glass roofs until the whole town appeared to be floating in a dream. Santiago lived above his aunt's apothecary, in a narrow room filled with dried herbs, unfinished sketches, and jars of colored sand he had collected since childhood. He was 17, though people often told him he looked younger when he was quiet and older when he was sad. His aunt, Ines, said this was because grief had a strange way of carving a face. Santiago's mother had vanished 7 years earlier. She had been a maker of sea charts, though not the kind sailors usually trusted. Her maps did not show only reefs, winds, and currents. They showed forgotten coves where people went to forgive themselves. They showed islands that appeared only during storms. They showed the safest direction to walk after a heartbreak. People laughed at her maps until they needed one. Then they came quietly at dusk, paid in coins or bread or secrets, and left with folded paper held close to their chests. One winter morning, she sailed beyond the lantern shoals to chart a place called the Quiet Current. Her boat returned without her. Inside it were 3 things: her red scarf, a broken compass, and a page torn from an atlas no one in Bell Harbor had ever seen. On that page was a drawing of a bell beneath the sea. Since then, Santiago had avoided the cliffs whenever fog covered the water. He avoided his mother's old workshop. He avoided questions about destiny, because destiny sounded too much like a polite word for loss. But the dream changed everything. At breakfast, Aunt Ines watched him stir honey into his tea for so long that the tea went cold. "You heard it again," she said. Santiago looked up. "The bell?" She did not answer immediately. She set a loaf of dark bread on the table, sliced it carefully, and placed one piece before him. "When your mother first began drawing the Quiet Current," Ines said, "she heard bells in her sleep." Santiago's spoon slipped from his fingers. "You never told me that. You never asked about the days before she vanished." His throat tightened. "Because everyone answers like I'm made of glass." Aunt Ines sat across from him. She had kind eyes, but they were not soft eyes. They had seen too much illness, too many births, too many last breaths to pretend life was gentle. Glass is not weak, she said. It breaks only when it is asked to hold more than it was shaped for. Santiago looked toward the window. Beyond the crooked roofs, the harbor bells swayed in the morning wind, though none of them rang. What is the quiet current? Ines folded her hands. Some call it a place. Some call it a passage. Your mother believed it was a border between the world we walk through and the world that dreams us. Santiago almost laughed, but the sound would not come. The world that dreams us? She believed dreams were not escapes. She believed they were invitations. To what? To become honest. The words settled over the table. Santiago thought of the whale's golden eye. The map made of choices. The moon sinking beneath the waves. Aunt Ines stood and crossed to the cabinet. From the highest shelf she took a small cedar box, dark with age. She placed it before him. This belonged to her. Santiago opened it. Inside lay the broken compass from his mother's empty boat. Its glass was cracked. Its brass rim was tarnished. The needle did not point north. Instead, it turned slowly, searching, then stopped facing Santiago's chest. He leaned back. That's impossible. Ines gave the smallest smile. Most important things are, at first. Santiago touched the compass. The needle trembled, as if alive. What does it point to? Your mother said it points toward the question you are most afraid to answer. Santiago closed the box. I don't want it. Yes, Ines said gently. That is usually how the journey begins. Before he could reply, a sound moved through the floorboards. A low, distant ringing. Not from the harbor towers. Not from the church bells. From below. Santiago stood. Aunt Ines closed her eyes, as if she had expected this and feared it all the same. The tide caves, she whispered. Beneath Bell Harbor, under the cliffs where waves entered caverns of black stone, there were caves no child was allowed to explore. The sea moved through them with a voice like breathing. At low tide, fishermen sometimes heard music there. At high tide, no one heard anything at all. Because no one returned from inside. Santiago took the cedar box. Ines touched his wrist. Listen carefully. If you go searching only for your mother, grief will lead you in circles. If you go searching for truth, you may find her in ways you do not expect. I don't understand. You will. He looked at her, suddenly afraid. Should I go? Aunt Ines's eyes shone. There are questions that become heavier every year we refuse them. One day, they are heavier than fear. The bell rang again. Santiago placed the compass in his coat pocket and walked out into the mist. The path to the tide caves wound down the cliffside through sea grass and blue stone. The morning was cold. Far below, waves struck the rocks with slow, thunderous patience. At the cave entrance stood a girl holding a lantern. She was about Santiago's age, with copper-brown skin, dark curls tied back with a strip of green cloth, and a satchel full of glass vials that clinked whenever she moved. You're late, she said. Santiago stopped. For what? For whatever frightening thing is about to happen. I don't know you. No, she said. But I know your aunt. She sent me. My aunt sent you before I left? She sent me 3 years ago. Santiago stared. The girl lifted her lantern. I'm Mira. I collect sounds. That isn't a profession. Neither is chasing bells under the ocean, yet here we are. From her satchel she took a tiny vial sealed with wax. Inside was nothing visible, but when she held it near Santiago's ear, he heard rain falling on leaves. Sound remembers places, she said. And places remember what people try to forget. Santiago did not know how to answer that. Mira stepped toward the cave. Your mother came here before she disappeared. She left a sound behind. What sound? Myra's expression softened. Your name. The cave breathed cold air. Together they entered. Inside, the world narrowed to lantern light, wet stone, and the hush of water moving in hidden channels. The walls glittered with salt. Strange pale flowers grew from cracks in the rock, opening and closing like sleeping hands. The bell rang again. Closer now. Santiago pulled out the compass. The needle spun wildly, then pointed deeper into the cave. Mira watched it. That is either a very special compass or a very confused one. It points toward questions. Useful. Dangerous. Why dangerous? Because most people prefer directions. They walked until the passage opened into a cavern where the sea had carved a pool as smooth as black glass. Above it, hanging from the stone ceiling by a chain green with age, was a bronze bell. It was underwater. Yet it rang. With each sound, circles of light moved across the pool. Mira whispered, I have searched for this place for years. Santiago stepped closer. The bell's surface was covered in markings. Not letters exactly, but flowing symbols like waves trying to become words. The compass needle pointed straight into the pool. Then, from the water, a voice rose. Not loud. Not human. Santiago. Mira gripped her lantern. The pool brightened. In its surface appeared an image, a woman in a red scarf standing on the deck of a small boat, wind pulling tears from her eyes. Santiago could not breathe. Mother. The image shifted. His mother looked older than she had when she vanished. Her face was tired, but alive with fierce tenderness. If this reaches you, she said, then the dream has found you. I am sorry for the silence I left behind. I thought I was following a map. I did not understand I was becoming one. The image flickered. The quiet current is real. It carries lost things, but not where we expect. To find the truth, follow the places where the world remembers itself, the harbor of unsent letters, the library of rain, the mountain without shadow, and the garden of sleeping mirrors. Her voice softened. Do not come to rescue me, my son. Come to awaken. The water went dark. Santiago fell to his knees. For a long moment, only the bell continued ringing beneath the water. Mira knelt beside him, not touching him, simply present. At last Santiago whispered, she's alive. Maybe. He turned to her sharply. Myra's eyes were kind. Hope is not the same as certainty. But it is a lamp. And a lamp is enough for the next step. Santiago looked at the underwater bell. For 7 years, he had believed his life had been divided into before and after. Before his mother vanished. After she vanished. But now another doorway had opened. Before the dream. After the bell. The compass needle turned toward the cave mouth, toward the sea, toward a journey he did not feel ready to begin. Santiago wiped his face. I'm afraid. Mira stood and lifted her lantern. Good, she said. Fear means the door matters. Chapter 2, The Harbor of Unsent Letters. They left Bell Harbor at dawn on a boat named the Little Maybe. It belonged to Mira, though it looked less like a boat and more like a question tied together with rope. Its sail had been patched in 9 different colors. Its wooden hull creaked whenever the waves lifted it, as if protesting the idea of adventure. Santiago stood at the stern watching Bell Harbor fade into mist. Aunt Inez had given him bread, dried figs, a wool blanket, and one final piece of advice. When you do not know what to trust, she said, trust what makes you more truthful, not what makes you less afraid. Now those words moved inside him as the sea opened wide. Mira adjusted the sail with practiced hands. You can stop looking back, she said. The town won't vanish because you blink. I know. Do you? Santiago faced the horizon. No. She smiled. For 2 days, they sailed east along a chain of small islands where white birds nested in the cliffs and the water shone green over hidden reefs. At night, Mira uncorked vials of sound, summer insects, temple bells, a child laughing, snow falling somewhere impossibly far away. Why collect sounds? Santiago asked on the second evening. Mira held up a blue vial. Because everyone tries to keep what disappears. Some keep portraits. Some keep coins. Some keep scars. I keep echoes. What's in that one? She listened before answering. My father singing. Is he dead? No. Worse. He forgot who I am. Santiago looked at her. Myra's voice remained calm, but her fingers tightened around the vial. A sickness took his memory year by year. At first, he forgot names of streets. Then recipes. Then my mother's face. Then mine. So I began collecting sounds, thinking if I gathered enough of his life, I could give it back to him. Could you? No, she placed the vial into her satchel. But I learned something. Love is not the memory of someone. Love is the willingness to meet them again and again, even as they change. The sea whispered against the hull. Santiago thought of his mother's face in the water. He wondered whether he wanted to find her as she was, or as he remembered her. On the third morning, they reached the harbor of unsent letters. It was not marked on any ordinary chart. The harbor lay between two cliffs shaped like open hands. Hundreds of small paper lanterns floated above the water, each carrying a folded letter that had never reached its reader. Some glowed gold. Some blue. Some flickered like tired stars. At the end of a crooked pier stood a post office with no walls. Only shelves. Thousands of shelves. And on every shelf, letters. A man in a gray coat swept the pier with a broom made of feathers. He had a long white beard braided with red thread and spectacles so thick his eyes looked like moons behind glass. Welcome, he said without looking up. Postage is regret. Delivery is courage. Mira leaned toward Santiago. Try not to make sudden metaphors. This place seems full of them. The old man bowed. I am Eno. Keeper of what was almost said. Santiago stepped onto the pier. We're looking for the quiet current. Everyone is, Eno replied. Though most call it by other names. My mother came this way. Many mothers have. She wore a red scarf. She made strange maps. At this, Eno stopped sweeping. Ah, he said softly. The woman who mailed a letter to the sea. Santiago's heart struck hard. You knew her? I know letters. Sometimes people. He led them through the shelves. The air smelled of ink, dust, and rain. As they walked, Santiago heard whispers. I forgive you. I was afraid. Please come home. I loved you, but I did not know how to stay. At last Eno stopped before a shelf of blue envelopes sealed with silver wax. Your mother left one letter here, he said. But she did not address it to you. Santiago's hope faltered. Then to whom? Eno handed him the envelope. On it, in his mother's handwriting, were 3 words. To my fear. Santiago stared at it. Mira whispered, that is either brave or extremely rude. Eno smiled. Often the same thing. Santiago broke the seal. Inside was a single page. He read aloud. Asterisk, I have carried you long enough to know your weight. You said you were protecting me. Sometimes you did. You kept me from storms when I was foolish, from cliffs when I was blind. But then you learned to speak in my own voice. You called yourself wisdom when you were only memory. You called yourself love when you were only possession, asterisk. Asterisk, I am not sending you away. I am giving you a smaller room inside me, asterisk. You may warn me, but you may not lead me. Santiago lowered the page. The words felt less like his mother's confession than his own. Eno watched him carefully. The next place you seek will not open for someone who is dragged by fear, he said. I'm not dragged by fear. The shelves trembled. 1,000 letters rustled. Mira raised an eyebrow. Santiago swallowed. Maybe a little. Eno pointed to a small writing desk facing the water. Then write. To whom? You know. Santiago sat. For a long time, he held the pen above the blank page. Then he began. Mother. The word blurred. He stopped, breathed, and continued. Asterisk, I have been angry with you for leaving, even when I told myself I was only sad. I have imagined finding you and making you explain everything. I have imagined refusing to forgive you. I have imagined falling into your arms like I am still 10 years old, asterisk. But I am not 10. Asterisk, I do not know what I will find. I do not know whether you are alive in the way I want you to be. I only know that your absence became the room where I learned to hide from my own life, asterisk. I am leaving that room. If I find you, I will come as your son, but not as your shadow. If I do not find you, I will still keep walking. He signed his name. When he folded the letter, the paper warmed in his hands. A lantern descended from the air, opened like a flower, and received it. Then it floated out over the harbor, joining the others. Eno nodded. Good. A letter sent honestly always arrives somewhere. The sea wind shifted. Beyond the harbor, a path of light appeared on the water, pointing north. Mira checked the sail. The Library of Rain? Eno returned to sweeping. Follow the weather that falls upward. Santiago frowned. What does that mean? The old keeper smiled. If directions were clear, no one would become wise. That evening, as the little Maybe sailed beneath a violet sky, Santiago felt lighter and more wounded at the same time. Mira sat beside him. You wrote well, she said. You read it? No. I heard the silence after. It changed. They watched the lanterns fade behind them. Santiago touched the compass in his pocket. The needle no longer pointed at his chest. It pointed north, toward clouds gathering like mountains. Do you believe in destiny? He asked. Mira thought for a while. I believe life gives us invitations. Some arrive as dreams. Some as losses. Some as people who annoy us into becoming honest. Are you saying you're my destiny? I'm saying you're easily annoyed. He laughed for the first time since leaving home. The sound surprised him. It surprised him even more that it did not feel like betrayal. Chapter 3, The Library of Rain. They found the rain at noon. It rose from the sea. Silver droplets lifted from the waves and drifted upward into the sky, forming a shimmering staircase of water. The air smelled of thunder and wild mint. At the top of the staircase floated an island of dark trees and white stone towers. Waterfalls ran upward along its cliffs. Clouds gathered beneath it like roots. Mira stared. I have several concerns. Santiago looked at the compass. Its needle pointed directly up. How do we sail to an island in the sky? Before Mira could answer, the sea beneath the little Maybe began to glow. The boat lifted. Not violently. Gently. As if held in enormous invisible hands. They rose through the rain. Droplets touched Santiago's face and filled his mind with images, a woman kneeling beside a cradle, a man dropping a ring into a river, a child watching snow for the first time, an old sailor whispering goodbye to a ship. Memories, Mira breathed. The rain is made of memories. The boat came to rest in a canal that wound through the floating island. On either side stood towers covered with moss, windows glowing amber in the mist. Bridges arched overhead. Every surface hummed softly with the sound of falling water. At the canal's end rose the Library of Rain. Its doors were carved from storm cloud wood. Above them, words had been etched in a language Santiago did not know, yet somehow understood. All that falls returns.